Hi, this is Hartin. We are here at KubeCon in San Diego, and today we have with us two guests from IBM, Briana and Berg. So first of all, can you tell us what do you guys do at IBM?
So I work in product management, and I run a portfolio of services within IBM Cloud around the developers, around the developer experience and making that really great for IBM.
I'm Berg. I'm a distinguished engineer with IBM. I'm responsible for our IBM Cloud Kubernetes service, our Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud, as well as Istio, which is our service mesh project in the open source.
So I'm pretty sure that you guys have seen some keynotes, some sessions, and walked around or attended some parties. So far, what has been your observation, of this event? Not about the parties, but the technology.
We'll talk about those too, but that's such a great question. So I actually had the opportunity of attending the very first KubeCon, and it was actually in a hallway in a hotel. Maybe 100 people showed up. It was very small, and one of the things that I thought was such a great contrast is that on Monday, which is really day zero, which I actually think is the best day of the conference, there's such an amazing vibe, we went from one yacht meetup to another yacht meetup. And I just think that just sort of exemplifies where we are in the Kubernetes journey better than anything. Is, a hallway versus one yacht to another yacht.
Well, the other thing that you can definitely see it too when you're going around, listening to the sessions, listening to the keynote, listening to the individuals that are attending. It's not just like a conference of technology for technology's sake and a lot of presentations with wishes and dreams and possibilities of what could happen in the future. These people are actually running Kubernetes, running mission critical workloads on Kubernetes. And that's the part that gets me really excited. It's not hype, right? It's actually being adopted and people are using it and they're excited about the new things that are coming out and ways that they can take it even further. So that excites me. I think you're seeing that all over at this conference.
Yeah, especially I think just the vibe of the conference is that people are really genuinely wanting to learn. And I think we run a lab most of the time on pretty much every KubeCon on day zero. We have an Istio lab and it's about 3 hours long. And we have hundreds of people that stay for the very end and they finish the lab and they're just so incredibly grateful for the education. And it's just a different vibe than you have at a lot of other conferences.
Yeah, it was crazy. There were people lined up 2.5 hours before the lab started to make sure that they were in line to get a seat because we had to turn people away. So it was really exciting.
We have seen a lot of projects, a product, they go through the same hype cycle, shiny object is there, but you're also right. And one thing that separates Kubernetes, it was already kind of, based on technology that was used at Google internally. It's not something that community created. So, we are going through this hype cycle. We see a lot of new projects. If you look at logo, it's actually hard to find who is Platinum, who is Diamond. There are so many logos there, it's like a blur. But so as you see these new cases coming in, new users, new vendors, we have seen projects like, let's say, OpenStack, they made a lot of mistakes. Right. So do you see that Kubernetes community is kind of prepared to not repeat those mistakes? Because there is a chance, that when the new users come in, things, get bloated.
Why don't you?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit different. Well, I think it's a lot different because of the fact that just our own experience, not even talking about other customers, but I know other vendors are probably in a similar situation. But our situation, 2.5, 3 years ago or so, we made a big bet on Kubernetes as being the technology going forward. We knew containers were going to change cloud, and we were moving to adopt containers. We were already running containers in production, but we wanted to provide a more dedicated orchestration platform. And we chose Kubernetes after we evaluated all the others, and it was a bet. It was a big bet at the time, right? Because it was still
there were other competitors out there, right?
Yeah, there were definitely other competitors. So it wasn't a slam dunk. You should go with Kubernetes. But as we started building it and we were using it. And then we were getting adopters, like the Watson team were the first adopters inside of IBM Cloud. They needed to move away from the platform they were on. They adopted ours. They actually went into production on what at the time was just our beta because it was more stable than their current platform. And we learned so many lessons along the way about the stability, the resiliency, and how we built the whole server. We actually extended Kubernetes and we run Kubernetes on Kubernetes. And long story short, over the next 2.5 years, more and more of the IBM services built on it, and now we're running basically all the IBM Cloud services on on Kubernetes and the same service that we provide out to our customers. So I believe because of that, it's not hype, right? We are running production grade services on this technology.
And I think that's a great point is, when we made this choice, it was late 2016, and I think there were a lot of different options at that time, and we pivoted hard and fast to Kubernetes. By the time we were GA in early 2017, the market had pivoted. We actually have some, visuals on this. It's incredible to see the pivot around Kubernetes. And by 2017, the market had clearly made the decision. And then from there, 2018 and now 2019, we've used almost 3 years of experience running Kubernetes in production, and we've been able to now GA OpenShift on IBM Cloud. And we were able to sort of apply all that learning and UX hardening and sort of all the feature functions that we've been able to build into the product over the last 3 years. So I think going back to your original question, I think we're kind of past the point where there was vulnerability in the project, and now it has so much momentum that I think we're on a really good path.
We've also seen a lot of projects coming in. Even if you look at Kubernetes, less about KubeCon, not Kubernetes. It's less about Kubernetes, but all the other projects which are part of CNCF. Some projects kind of overlap, and at the same time, there are a lot of gaps there. So where do you see gaps, and where do you see some overlap of some projects, and how do you think it will consolidate over time?
And I think this is just like a very ambiguous, innovative space. So it's evolving constantly. And I think you'll see projects collapse, and some will expand and some will go away.
Well, we saw that yesterday, right? With open telemetry.
Yeah,
right?
Open sensors.
So two projects which did overlap. They said, okay, enough's enough. This is too confusing for everyone, all the users, and they decided, let's bring them together and have one telemetry. So tracing. So open tracing and open census came together, and now it's open telemetry, right? So that's a great example of how that, but it's huge. There are so many. I went to the website the other day, and it's just monstrously large. And I think that's good and bad. Because as a user, you're going to have to figure out, okay, what pieces am I going to put together? So that's going to be the interesting thing, I think. As we evolve, it's providing those use cases and those patterns for how do all these projects come together to allow me to build a cloud-native application, right? Should I assemble all of them? Or should vendors pick and choose which ones they want to use and make those available and provide a user experience for customers? I think the answer is a little bit of both.
I think it takes a lot of collaboration across the community to say, okay, we have similar goals, and how should we align together to bring the community forward. And I think what's interesting too about where we are in sort of our journey is that I think we've really hardened our Kubernetes service and our OpenShift service, and now we sort of pivoted to the next era, which I think really is about developer productivity. And we had a few different announcements this week around, we have a managed Istio service, we have a new open source project called KUI, which is a CLI tool that helps you visualize Kubernetes development. And then we also have an open source project called Iterate, which allows you to sort of learn from Istio and make some really crucial decisions about whether it's versions that you want to update and analytics around all the data that you're getting from Istio.
Since you mentioned OpenShift and Red Hat a couple of times, now Red Hat is kind of part of IBM. How is the integration, within the teams, the technologies working out there? Because Red Hat is still operating as an independent company.
That's such a great question. So one of the things I think is neat is that similar to working in the open, I find that Red Hat and IBM have come together, and we've had to sort of solve similar problems. And I think we've really sort of collaborated a lot around OpenShift and how to kind of take it to the next level. And it's neat how I think we've sort of aligned or sort of gotten some momentum around the technology itself.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's a lot of focus, and it's like kind of exciting actually to get different perspectives and how we're going to make it better together. And so I think that has been a rallying point for the teams.
Well, I've actually enjoyed it. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in Red Hat, a lot of smart people in IBM and on our team, and just the collaboration, the learning, just communicating around just awesome tech, honestly. and starting to work together on it, it's really interesting that the teams actually gel very well. Now I'm taking it from my perspective. It's been going really well, and we've learned a lot. We've learned a great deal about their technology. They've learned about our technology. We have differences of opinions. We agree on some things. We make compromises just like any team would, but it's been a very nice experience so far, how we collaborate. It's great.
What I've seen too is it's sort of been a validation for our team because we feel so strongly about the technology that we've delivered, and we feel really proud about it. And I think sometimes it's nice to have a third party to come in sort of a little bit unbiased, and they could have poke holes in what we're doing, but say, wow, this is actually really cool what you guys built. And I think that's been extraordinarily validating, and it's been great, actually.
Well, and just a little side on that, we were having a discussion with Derek Carr and Clayton Coleman one day, early on when we first met, and we were telling them about something we wanted to do, a direction we wanted to take OpenShift and make some modifications, and Clayton just looked at us and he said, "You're crazy," straight up. And we acknowledge the fact that we probably are crazy, but we still need to we need to go down this path. So it's hilarious because at first it's like, well, that's kind of crazy. But after you get into it and we started talking through and how we did things, it opened up some of the perspective a little bit more and go, oh, wow, you're actually running production grade Kubernetes and now OpenShift at scale. I mean, we run OpenShift at scale as a managed service. So it's just great having those perspectives and learning.
19,000 clusters of production and growing every day. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
Since the Red Hat and IBM still operate independently, what kind of collaboration is there? Because of course you guys can just, as developers you can do whatever you want, but what kind of collaboration is there within the engineering teams or developers?
So we run a managed service, right? And just like any service provider, you have to have a contract with the software provider that you're dealing with, and we do. I mean, we treat each other. It's a separate business entity ultimately, because at the end of the day, Red Hat is selling a software product, and that product has to work in multiple different environments. Not some IBM, but not just IBM, right? It's all the other cloud providers as well. So there can't be favoritism and things like that, because then it actually doesn't really work out very well, because they still need to be able to support those other providers. So we do collaborate. We collaborate in the open. We collaborate on the products. A lot of it about how do we support and adjust OpenShift so it works within our cloud, just like any cloud provider would, right? Because we want to run and use OpenShift. So we collaborate with them on that topic about how do we run OpenShift in IBM Cloud. So it's really no different than how they would collaborate with another provider.
No, my point was that, since I would say different, but like kind of sister organization. I'm just using a wrong term. Yeah. So I'm talking, because you are using and contributing to open source, they're also contributing to open source. So I was talking about that part, not the sales team competing, but engineering, how developers work together on the code base. Is there any kind of synergy there, or it's just like the same good old open source model where you can do whatever you want to do?
It's interesting though, because we've actually been aligned for many years in the open, because there are two companies that really have a history and dedication to open innovation. So we've already been collaborating in many projects like Istio and Knative and Kubernetes itself. So a lot of those sort of relationships and collaborations and even meetups, and there are meetups in Raleigh that we both live in Raleigh, and there's a big Red Hat office in Raleigh. So we've gone to Kubernetes meetups in the Red Hat Tower. So a lot of that collaboration has already been happening.
Right, and in the future, more of it's going to happen as well. And our goal is to do it in the open, just like Red Hat generally will build and do all of their collaboration in the open. We really want to adopt that as well. And we do a lot in the open already, but our continued collaboration with Red Hat is going to be in the open the same way.
Earlier you mentioned a couple of new projects, talk about them a bit.
I'm so glad you asked that question. So yeah, we did have some announcements this week around really developer productivity. And so we announced KUI, which I mentioned before, which is a CLI that really helps you visualize if you're doing Kubernetes development. We also announced Iterate, which is a tool that leverages Istio and helps you do analytics. So you can figure out when it's the right time to move to a new version when you're developing in a microservices architecture. And then we also announced a managed Istio product, which makes it easier than ever to deploy Istio within Kubernetes.
Yeah, the Iterate project is really interesting because some people may or may not know, but Istio is really a set of primitives for programming the mesh, right? Which opens up a lot of opportunities to build really cool user experiences on top of that. And that's exactly what Iterate provides there. And what I like about Iterate is that it's really, you're defining a canary experiment. I mean, that's how you define it and you run it. You can do this in Istio, but you have to manually go through and drive what the canary deployment is and call all the primitives from Istio. What Iterate does is it provides a new custom resource definition that allows you to define declaratively your experiment, right? So you know what version you're currently on, what you're moving to, what metrics you're going to be watching, what are the thresholds of those metrics, what are the incremental adjustments that are going to take place as those metrics are being analyzed. And Iterate has all of the analytics and everything in there, analyzing all those metrics that are coming back, and it makes the decision about how to proceed with that experiment. And then it has a set of dashboards and everything that's really cool. You can see the experiment physically go through and roll out. You can see the execution of that experiment. You can see what's happening. And then you can make a decision if you want to proceed with it because it's working well, or you want to can it and just roll it back, right? So it's a really cool project, and it's spelled with an 8.
Yes, Iterate.
Iterate.
Like to be, creative with the names.
Brian, Dan, thank you so much for taking your time and talking to us today and trying to explain what IBM is doing in the Kubernetes space. And I look forward to talking to you guys again. But I would like to have a longer session where I can also get to talk a bit.
To us longer. That's fantastic.
I think that's great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks
for having us.